everyone, welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT Top 10 video. Today's video will be a countdown of the top 10 champions for ranked play in patch 11.12. There's a good amount of diversity in champions ranging from frontline to utility to damage dealers. We'll be breaking down what makes each of these champions useful and why they're doing well in the current meta. Let's go ahead and get started. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. Alright, let's get back to the video. To start off our top 10, we have Lux coming in as the number 10 champion. Going by the current meta, there's a lot of champions that are doing well based on vertical traits such as Dawnbringer, Forgotten, and in Lux's case, Redeemed. Knowing which champions within those traits will bring a lot of value to your board is important to learning the meta. As for Lux, she's one of the best redeemed champions and also doubles as a Mystic. Mystic is essentially in the current meta given the amount of magic damage there is between champions like Karma, Velkoz, Ryze, and others. Almost every endgame composition ends up with at least 2 Mystic. Lux doesn't always make the cut, which is why she's 10th on the list, but thanks to being redeemed, she's common enough to earn her spot. Besides her traits, Lux's ability is also quite useful. Not only does it serve well as utility with shields, Lux also packs quite the punch with the damage she gains on it after hasting. This is being exploited in specific circumstances where Lux is used as the primary carry, mostly in games where you're unable to hit something like Velkoz 2 or Karma 2. But the fact that you can carry with her speaks volume to her ability's versatility. At the end of the day, you can play a lot of compositions in the meta that won't rely on Lux, but the builds that do use Lux gain a lot of value in running her. Let's move on to another redeemed champion that's coming in at number 9, Velkoz. It would be disingenuous to claim Velkoz is weaker than the champions further down on the list because in actuality, he's really not. Velkoz can easily go toe-to-toe with the other carries like Karma or Draven, but there's a few glaring issues with Velkoz that lower his overall consistency, which is why he's so high up on the list. The largest issue is positioning. If players are actively scouting and positioning against you, it can be difficult to win rounds consistently with Velkoz, especially before you get into the top 4, where there's lots of RNG in who you may play against. This means you, as the Velkoz player, have to make a decision to position towards the left or right. Sometimes you'll guess correctly, and that should result in a win. Other times, you won't and you'll lose. The chance to lose a round based on some luck in positioning is a big issue with Velkoz, and it only gets worse when you get to the top 4 when you know who you'll play against. If they position well, you'll likely lose. Of course, this does mean it comes down to who's better at positioning and scouting, but the onus is more on you as the Velkoz to guess correctly because Velkoz is so reliant on positioning to do damage. No other carry is that dependent upon being in the correct position to maximize their damage. Another issue with Redeemed is it does struggle in the late game because the stat bonus is not enough to keep your backline alive long enough against things like Karma, Teemo, or Heimerdinger, whereas Dawnbringer heals or Forgotten just does a boatload of damage. That said, it's not like Velkoz is bad, he's just harder to pull off wins with compared to the other late game carries. If you have the items for him and hit a Velkoz too, you're going to be in a great position. Just keep in mind, the struggle will be there the later you get into the game. Up next, we have Nunu coming in at number 8. Nunu is the current king of the brawlers and is one of the best early game champions by far. Not only because he provides a strong frontline, but he also enables Abomination. Abomination is certainly weaker than the previous patch, but in the right situation, it's viable and will carry you through the early and mid game. Nunu is the foundation for that as well as for 4 brawlers. What makes Nunu good, aside from his traits, is his ability, which can take out enemy units quickly, especially early game. Since he gains a ton of health from Brawler, there's few situations where he won't gain the true bonus damage. True damage is going to ignore all defensive stats, so other frontline champions won't stand a chance against him once he casts his ability. With frontline being essential to winning rounds, you can easily win streak off of just a Nunu 1. But as we said, Abomination did become weaker this patch, meaning it won't scale well into the late game. While 5 Abomination can help alleviate this issue, the fact is, the end game you'll rarely see Abomination do well. Brawlers also fall off in the late game, so Nunu becomes irrelevant with both of his traits lacking strong scaling. That's okay, because Nunu will serve you well in the front line from stage 2 until early stage 5. Let's move on to the pair of champions everyone always runs together, coming in at number 7, Ivern and Volibear. It's likely Ivern and Volibear are always going to end up placed together if they make it into the top 10, since you rarely run one without the other. Revenant just helps so much in increasing their value as frontliners, especially Volibear, who can struggle to cast his ability without items. Yes, 2 Revenant is not a lot, but the ability to revive is huge for any champion with CC, especially AoE crowd control. Thanks to the armory changes introduced in 11.12, the chances of having a Revenant emblem are decently high. It's certainly not a guarantee, but it's not uncommon to have the option to make it, and 3 Revenant is a giant boost in survivability from Ivern and Volibear. And a Revenant emblem can be given to any important champion, whether that's a frontliner or a backliner. All in all, we don't really need to talk endlessly about Ivern and Volibear. Everyone knows at this point that they're a staple frontline duo for the late game that fits into most compositions. Even with the frontliner theme, up next we have Garen coming in at number 6. Garen is a champion you almost always want in your late game board if you're running some type of AP comp. In some cases you may find it difficult to fit him in, such as with Redeem, but he's absolutely mandatory for Karma. Besides being a Dawnbringer and being rather hard to kill due to his ability Shield, he provides magic resist shredding. Being able to shred magic resistance is key to the success of magic damage comps because it helps deal with the enemy frontline. This is especially true in a meta that favors items like Shadow Locket and splash traits like Mystic. Once the enemy frontline is dead, the likelihood of winning the round goes up a lot. The shred helps Karma/Dawnbringer outscale the other compositions, which is why the endgame revolves around her, High Roll, Forgotten, Redeemed, and Yasuo. Garen is an important piece for that success. Let's shift away from frontliners to our number 5 champion on the list, that's a damage dealer, Draven. Forgotten has shot up in value the longer the patch has gone on, and Draven is a core champion with that trait. Legionnaire is also doing well, though that's mostly because of Yasuo, as Legionnaire is not as essential for Draven if you're running Forgotten and have good items. But back to Draven. Draven outputs a ton of damage that gets amplified by the items you have and what traits you give him. 6 Forgotten is quite common right now, which is a whopping 70 attack damage. Even the ability power bonus is helpful since it scales on his ability. That bonus attack damage allows you to run utility items like Bloodthirster and Last Whisper, which adds a lot of flexibility to playing Draven. Unfortunately, Draven can suffer from being killed too easily by champions like Karma and other AP champs. Sure, you can try to itemize around that, but sometimes Karma is just going to take down your Draven. This is the same with champions like Teemo and Heimerdinger as well. Luckily, Draven isn't the only champion that does well in Forgotten and Legionnaires, so you're not forced to rely on him to win rounds. That said, he can solo carry you in the right lobby and is by far the best AD carry champion in the current meta. Okay, we're going back to frontliners again with Rell coming in at number 4. Yes, this list is frontline heavy, but that's for good reason. Without a steadfast frontline, your board is going to suffer. That's why early game champions like Nunu are so important, as well as late game champions like Garen. And out of all those frontline champions, the best by far is Rell. We've had Rell on this list basically every week since Set 5 came out, and for good reasons. She's hard to kill, has 3 useful traits, and her ability is super useful. Not only will it shield your other champions, usually your carry, it also stuns the enemy team. Just that alone is enough to run Rell in your frontline, and often that's the case. With Rell's traits, you get even more value, though they can be situational. Redeemed is not as consistent as other vertical traits, but common enough that you'll likely see a player with Rell and Redeemed. Cavaliers fell off a bit as a composition, but thanks to the armory changes, it's not impossible to find a Cavalier emblem to use. And of course, there's Ironclad, which can be useful depending on the lobby. Granted, we're in a meta that favors magic damage, so Ironclad won't always be that useful. But combining all those factors, it's no surprise to see Rell as one of the most contested champions. Up next, we have Ryze as the number 3 champion. Oh boy, Ryze. Ryze isn't the only reason for Forgotten doing well, but he sure is pulling more than his own weight. Being a Mystic is also helpful, though it mostly allows Ryze to fit into compositions other than Forgotten. But the main reason for Ryze doing well right now is his ability. Slap a Shadow Blue buff on Ryze and wait for the magic to happen. And by magic, we mean him perma-stunning the enemy team. It's not guaranteed to always happen, and having the right item isn't easy to do, but golly, does Ryze dish out a ton of CC. That alone is why he's so contested, not just for Forgotten, but for any players running Mystic as well. The champion coming in at number 2 is Yasuo. It's odd when you look at the match histories of top players, Yasuo doesn't always show up that often. Then you watch streams or play your own games, and guess who's dominating the mid game? Yasuo. With the critical damage nerf they did in 11.12, Yasuo took over as king of the meta because his damage output largely relies on magic and true damage. Mix in that he's a Nightbringer and scales well with AP, and you've got yourself a versatile 3-cost carry. Yasuo can fall off in the late game unless you commit to 3-starring him, and that's likely why we don't see him pop up in the match histories as much as other carries. But if you get the right items and a solid composition, Yasuo is the best champion in the meta. Getting all of that is difficult though, which is why he's only number 2 on the list. The champion coming in at number 1 is Karma. Again, if you look at the match histories of top players, the chances are you're going to see a lot of Karma and Dawnbringer. With the AD champions being overall weaker, it means AP champions are hot right now. And Karma is the hottest after they buffed her and reduced her reliance on mana items. Plus, Dawnbringer is inherently defensive, meaning you can go all in on damage for Karma and she'll still survive a long time because of the healing. On top of that, there's Garen for your frontline, and fitting in 6 Dawnbringers is a lot easier with the armory changes. So to recap, Karma is more flexible with her items, AD champions are weaker, and Dawnbringer is really good throughout the whole game. Oh, and Karma also deals a ton of damage and is an invoker. Yeah, we can see why players lean heavily into playing Karma late game, as she's the queen of consistently getting top 2 in the current meta. That's going to be it for our top 10 champions of patch 11.12. But before we go, we quickly have a few honorable mentions to talk about. This week is a bit different because we mostly wanted to highlight 3 5-cost champions, those being Kindred, Teemo, and Heimerdinger. All 3 of these champions are important pieces to the late game, but each have downsides that lower their consistency, besides the obvious one of being 5-cost units and are thus harder to find. Kindred suffers from needing to be 2-star to get value from their ability, and being a Mystic means she will be heavily contested. Heimerdinger has a ridiculously large mana pool, so without items, Renewer, or Invoker, it's almost a waste of space on your board to use him. And Teemo costs health to use, which is fine if you're in a good position, but any players below 50 health really need to consider whether it's worth losing HP for Teemo at all. All 3 of them are useful champions, but make sure you consider what value they bring to your board before investing too much into them. Alright folks, that's all we have for you for today. Even though AD champions aren't doing as well, there's still plenty of viable options in the meta. Let us know in the comment section below what champions you think deserve to be in the top 10. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.